Welcome to Beyond the Wild podcast, where we go venturing beyond the gear, beyond the subject, beyond the shot, to find the heart of wildlife and adventure creative. Beyond the Wild podcast is brought to you by Pictureline.com, your online source for everything photography, and Canon USA. Listen in, we share tips and tactics learned from years of journeying into the wild. Your hosts are Jason Loftus, Ron Hayes, and myself, Mark Raycroft. Let's begin another episode of Beyond the Wild.
Gentlemen, welcome back.
It's good to be here. It's been so long. Our time between recordings has really grown lately.
Yeah, well, we're making up for it.
Right.
Seriously.
More content to come. And this is one that I think, well, okay. So this has been overdue. So Colin at Pictureline made a concerted effort to make sure we had the R5 II in our hands August 20th on release date. Correct?
That's correct.
And we still have not taken an episode to talk about this camera release. And I am going to go ahead and just share a little bit about why. Because it almost got left as an anchor in Churchill and again on the river in Brazil because I got a lemon and that thing would not pick up focus. I kept telling Jason, okay, Jason, what did you tell me when I would complain to you about this camera?
I was like, Ron, I don't know what you're talking about. This thing is tack sharp. It's nailing it every time. It's so much better than the R5, the original version. I'm getting eyes. I'm getting everything I need. I'm actually using my back button focus for eye tracking way more than I ever do with my R5. You're smoking. I don't know what your problem is. Is pretty much what I said to you.
And Mark, when we were driving around photographing deer, what was I making a list for?
I don't remember. But I did have a number of people join me on trips this fall that were shooting the Canon R5 Mark II and were loving it.
Yeah, I was not having the same experience.
I don't know. Have you
guys seen that?
Have
you guys seen that Saturday Night Live episode where there's the three of them talking about the aliens that picked them up?
I was wrapped in like a robe made out of warm, glowing energy.
Yeah, like a blanket made out of pure love.
Yeah, a little different for me. I had my shirt I came in with, but my pants were gone. So my coot was out.
Ah, yes, that was not my experience. That's
not.
There's two of them, I think, of those skits, and they're both absolutely awesome. So funny. Yeah, that actress.
That was not my experience.
So good. Yeah, check it out they're on YouTube. Yeah, it's hilarious.
They're all over YouTube.
SNL alien. Probably just a search for SNL alien abduction or something, and it's
just have a box of tissue because you're going to laugh so hard you cry.
Yeah, I think it's is it Ryan Gosling is the guest?
He was on both of them. Yeah,
that's
true.
Okay, so it's hilarious. Check it out. It's enough fun. But it's different experience for you.
So anyway,
everybody else.
Mine would not pull focus, and then Jason finally got to when we were all three together here. A couple weeks ago?
Yep.
Jason got it in his hand because he was doing me a favor, taking some portraits for a headshot for an upcoming trip. And he looks at my camera and says, "What the heck? What just happened?" And I said, "Exactly. The thing just shuts down in the middle of a shoot."
You set me up.
Well, I didn't have to. That's the point. It was doing it all the time. So not only would it not focus, but it would just shut down. So I have a large, to me, a large male polar bear that had been sleeping on the tundra just off the beach. Beautiful background, beautiful fall tundra foliage. This bear gets up, walks right at me, and my camera shuts down. And every time it did it, I had to pop the batteries out, pop them back in. I know there were some people that experienced that with the R5. So I literally I switched and shot solely with an R7 from that point forward on the Churchill trip. And the R7 is not my favorite as far as image quality. I will say that after shooting with the full frame. And the R5 is beautiful. Right. So my thought was, I'm sending this thing back. Well, then Canon doesn't allow that until you do certain things, take certain steps. So Colin helped me out. The rep in Salt Lake for Canon helped me out quite a bit, gave me some suggestions, and then kind of intervened on my behalf. I sent it back through CPS, which is one of the reasons I came back to Canon, because the Canon Professional Services is excellent. Sent it to CPS. They sent it back, said, well, we didn't really have the same problem, but we did change the circuit board, and just in case, and sent it back. And that thing is a whole new animal. I took it out the first time. It was grab and focus like nothing I've ever seen before. And that is what everybody else told me it would do. So thanks to all those that helped. It was a very frustrating experience. However, I am now a believer. But I still want them to get a couple lenses to us. But anyway.
Yeah. You know, it's a good testimonial though, right, Ron? Because this is really a reason, one of the reasons I've been using Pictureline for quite some time, well before we started this venture and everything. And the reasons for that are some of these things. A, I know that they're always going to help me get an issue like this taken care of. You're not on your own. B, they're really willing. Being local here for me makes it easier, but they're willing to help you get those things sent back and work with you on those things. They don't just leave you out there on in the cold. And they have really good relationships with those reps, not just Canon, but they also have good, relationships with Sony and Nikon as well. So yeah, I mean, it's a good testimonial that every now and then those things happen. And if you buy your gear off of some website that you don't know or whatever, you may have a really hard time getting something like this addressed. But you buy it from somebody like Pictureline that's reputable, and they have the customer service to back it up, and the ability to escalate things as necessary to help their customers out. That's a big deal. It's a big reason why I'm a big fan of using Pictureline.
Yeah, and special shout out to Kyle Valla, the Canon rep in the Rocky Mountain area.
Right.
He was instrumental in making sure that things were taken care of.
Yeah.
So, as it turns out, just wasn't communicating. And I shoot EF glass. So that, to me, was one of the reasons why I thought, well, Jason, we're not comparing apples to apples because you're shooting RF glass.
Right.
And so I'm shooting adapted. And the adapters, actually, the one adapter just wouldn't focus or had focus issues. The other adapter is the one that would cause it to shut down. So I don't know what the communication issue was. I don't know where the short was. But I will say that when I sent both adapters and the camera body back, when they returned to me, it is, like I said, it's exactly what I was waiting for 2 years while we were hearing all the rumors about what the R5 II was going to be.
Right. Hey, didn't you tried my 600 too, which is RF glass, and you were still having issues, correct?
No, you wouldn't let me touch that.
Oh, you liar.
No, you let me use your camera body. And I used your 100 to 500, but.
Oh, I would have let you use my 600. What are you talking about?
No.
You didn't ask.
That was never offered.
Oh. Sorry. Well, it's a standing offer if you ever decide you need to.
No, appreciate it.
Yeah. Anyways.
I need to this spring for sage grouse.
Hey, yeah.
You can just ship it to me.
Sure.
I'll get it back to you at some point.
Well, hopefully one of these days you're going to let me come with you, but
maybe. So Mark, what have you heard? I mean, because you've done several workshops this fall as well and had participants that use it, right? So
yeah, everybody was very happy with it. Everybody was loving the camera, the body. No complaints I heard in the field. So, given what I know of you two gentlemen and, how very important photography is to your worlds, I'm quite interested to hear so Jason, you said that it is better, R5 Mark I. So my first question is how? What did you notice after using it throughout this fall in the field? What's the improvement? And, was it worth the trade up? But just also, sorry, before we go there, on the Pictureline content as well, and the importance of, they've been a fantastic sponsor for us, and we're getting close to wrapping up our first year. And toward the end of the podcast, I want to share some fun statistics and shout outs and thank yous. But since we're talking about them, I've had people that I know order cameras, expensive cameras from Pictureline, first-time customers, reached out to me with questions, and I directed them to Colin, and they were all ecstatic with the service they got, the price they got, the deliverables they got. Apparently, they even received Beyond the Wild stickers. There's a selling point in the package as well as a bonus. But that being said, we're really well taken care of. And within a short period of time, all of them had messaged me back saying so. So just a shout out to our sponsor, encouraging our listeners, because not only are you going to have great service, but you are also directly supporting our show by sourcing cameras or any photographic equipment from Pictureline. Pictureline.com, and Colin Bigelow is the gentleman there who looks after a lot of our orders from our guests or our listeners and so on. So that quickly, but yeah, back to the R5 Mark II. I've been asking these guys for quite a period of time. Let's do this episode. Everybody wants to hear your take on this new piece of equipment. It's been talked about. The specs are out there. It was so much excitement around it. Honestly, with the guests in the field, we're so focused on what's happening, and my primary concern is their equipment's working well. If it is, and they're happy and we're good to go. I heard all favorable comments, but I didn't dive into the specifics. It was more about sharing the experience that was happening than the camera gear that way, because it was all good. But for you two, Jason, to start with, because you've been using it longer, what did you notice was different than the R5 Mark I?
Well, we've talked a little bit about this stuff, but it's really, now it's set in stone for me, the benefits. One of them being the new autofocus system. It's a completely new system. And it's spot on. It nails it. It's finding eyes like no tomorrow. I've had no problem with it. Only time I've had, that's not fair. And I think any camera is going to have this problem. But, if an animal gets in the brush and stuff, sometimes it loses focus on the eye, obviously. But other than that, it's pretty incredible how accurate it is. I set up my R5, my Mark I, as my shutter button is the center point. It's just a single point, and that's how I shot my R5 most of the time, because I just couldn't trust the eye focus and the tracking. So I would use it when I could. Most of the time, I didn't feel comfortable with it because I didn't want to miss anything, and I always felt like that was a back button option. I'd use it if I could. Otherwise, if things are going down, I don't want to have to worry about it. And I'm just, I can smash that shutter button and I know I'm getting focus. So with the R5 Mark II, I'm finding myself using that back button tracking option way more, quite often actually, which is really nice because that's the whole benefit of it, right? Is to be able to help you compose things differently and to not have to worry about the focus so much and worry about how you're composing your shot. So that's a huge benefit, in my opinion, night and day. The other big thing that stands out to me is the pre-record. We've mentioned that. I don't do a ton of video. I have used it a couple times for photos, and it does make a difference. Half a second doesn't sound like much, but when you think, if you go 1/1000, that one is just enough if like a bird's taken off or whatever, like we've talked, that it gives you just that split second to react and go ahead and smash that shutter, and it'll give you those photos. Still have to be able to track the animal, right? If you're going to get anything beyond that initial takeoff, obviously. So there is, it's limited. But anything that you're using video for or anything like that, that pre-records, pretty big deal. And I did find that to be very useful a couple times. Don't do as much video as some others do, but when I've used it a couple times, it's been awesome. See other benefits.
Yeah, the pre-record for video is like 3 to 5 seconds. You can.
Yeah, and I've set it on the 5 second. Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. Sorry, Ron. Yeah, it's a big deal. It's significant, and I don't know that I'd want more in photo. I don't know. To me, the pre-record for photo, I haven't really seen the benefit near as much. Maybe maybe I just haven't thought through the scenarios where it might be of value. But it is helpful if you're doing like the bird on the perch type thing, waiting for them to take off, something like that.
The other thing that I see coming up is we were just talking about grouse.
Oh, right.
In the springtime. And so, you see them square off, or sage grouse will kind of come into each other and parallel, and then they'll start kind of turning sideways, but they'll stay parallel. And that's when the fight's about to start. But if you're not ready, you're definitely going to miss those first few, pecks or spurs. And then sharptail and prairie chickens, they'll get down and kind of go back and forth face to face, and then they just go vertical when they fight. And again, if you're not ready for it, you miss it. So I think that is going to be big this spring. I look forward to getting out this spring. And I think that's, the R5 II and Canon has done a good job of working to, the R3 had pre-record, I believe, but it did not have raw pre-record. And I think that is the only thing holding Nikon back, is they have pre-shoot, pre-record, but they're shooting in JPEG if you shoot with the pre-record function. Sorry,
and
Mark.
The new A12, right? A12, yeah. The new A12 has pre-recording as well. So
raw.
That's raw, right? So, but I think that's a good point, Ron. And I think it's just my style of shooting. I haven't found the pre-record from a photo standpoint as significant, but still, it's a nice feature to have, to know you can lean on it if you need it.
Yeah, I don't think with ungulates it's not a big deal, but I think birds for sure. There's so much faster movements and reactions and behaviors.
Yeah,
that I think it will be advantageous. But the dangerous part is I immediately took mine from 40, so the high speed shooting or high speed shutter. I took it from 40 frames a second down to 20 immediately. So now instead of at 40 frames a second, you're going to have a half a second, you'll have 20 images. If your shutter speed is fast enough. And moving it down to 20, that only adds 10 because it's a significant volume. Utilizing that pre-record, the number of shots that you get in addition to what you think you're getting, it adds up pretty quick.
I can see it working really well for humpbacks and when I go to Australia, breaking the surface.
Yeah, absolutely. Right? Because you don't know when that moment's going to happen, and
you get on it. Most of them they're out, and then you've got half and you get the fall, like half the jump. Mm-hmm. So that would add, and just a quick Nikon. It was great. All the firmware updates are fantastic. For the Z9, but not many of us shoot in JPEG. So pre-record, that's something they need to do with their firmware updates. Get that finished. That would be nice for that purpose for me.
Yeah.
What about color? I heard the sensor for the R5 II. I mean, not that I heard criticisms for the first one for color, but I heard it was better. Do you notice any differences?
I mean, it's different. I will say that. I think it's a little better as far as some of the color. But But for me, it's a little bit more on the orange side. You know, the oranges really stand out with the Canon sensor. So I find myself having to tone that down quite a bit, even more so than I did with the Mark One. But you know, that's just a style thing, right? It's easy to do and post and everything. It's not a big deal. I like to saturate my images like you do, Mark. And when I do that, that orange really kind of jumps out at you. So I have to tone that down a little bit in post. But yeah, the colors seem to be a little bit richer. I mean, for the technical folks that really pixel peep and stuff, I think there's a difference, but I don't think most people, you know, would necessarily notice a difference, honestly. But it is a new sensor, and that's nice. And then some of the other features that they've added are just really, I mean, the menus are deeper in some cases. Mm-hmm. They're simpler on the autofocus side, which is nice. But they're deeper in other areas, which is good too. You just got to get to know the menu a little bit better and be able to deep dive into some of those other adjustments. For example, you
menus within the menus now.
Right. Levels and levels. But I like the ability to be able to, like Ron said, you can tone down your continuous shooting. For me, it kind of comes preset, but I can adjust. Like if I've got high plus, I've got high, and then I've got the normal, and then I've got single. And I can actually, single, but I can adjust what frame rate I want each of those to be at. So if I want my high plus to be 10, I can do that, right? Which is nice. I like that adjustability, because that's one thing I did not like about the R5 is like, if you're an electronic, you're 20 frames, end of story, So that's nice. And I like the actual sound, to have the sound, the electronic. I like to hear the shutter, like we've talked. And so Ron hates shooting with me, but I like to hear my shutter. So yeah, those are all things. And then the other thing I'm just starting to play with right now, honestly, just because like, hey, I've got this feature, I want to really give it a try, is the eye, it's not eye tracking, it's the
it's your eye focus.
The eye focus, yes, that's a better way to put it. Not the eye tracking, but the eye focus. So
using your eye to focus,
right? Using my eye to focus. Now I haven't figured out how to get it to focus, but I've figured out how to get it to track, and it's incredible how accurate it is. I mean, it has you go through a quick calibration. It wants you to do it in different scenarios. Really bright, maybe really dark. Whatever, a little cloudy, whatever. Try to just to maintain accuracy, but I've just been playing around with it, and pretty much whatever I'm looking at with my eye, that thing is spot on. The target is spot on at what I'm looking at. So kind of cool. I don't know. I need to figure out how to, get it to actually do the focus function with that, which is just going to, just watch a YouTube video or something, I'm sure.
I've been
call Colin.
A little scared, to be honest with you, because I'm looking through the scene, trying to compose it all the time, and I don't want my focus to come off of the subject.
Right.
That's
No, I'm with
my
you, Ron.
fear.
I'm with you on that, and I thought about that because when I was just playing with it, I was looking at I'm looking around the room, and all of a sudden I look over and like, "Ooh, that would have definitely made me lose focus on whatever I was doing." Right? Because I'm the same way. I'm looking at information on my screen. I'm looking at the histogram. I'm looking at all kinds of stuff on my screen. So I'm not sure, but I mean, I think again, it could be one of those tools that for specific scenarios could be pretty useful. So. Anyways, we'll see how that goes. But what were you going to say, Mark?
No, I was just going to do a short deep dive into that subject, because the animal eye tracking or bird eye tracking or car tracking is also good now. Mm-hmm. That it'd be an interesting challenge to see if the technology of using one's eye to focus would actually be any better than what the algorithm does for tracking the eye. I mean, that's what I love about the mirrorless is it's so effective. The autofocus on the eye tracking, it's not perfect, but it's so good that I guess it's an option for those that might prefer it, but I'm wondering how, and I did have people in the field playing with it, but it was new enough. They weren't trusting it to do it all the time. They went back to the animal eye tracking autofocus capabilities. But yeah, I don't see how that could be improved upon, but maybe it could be. But you would have to train your eye to be in the game on your subject and not wander too. Interesting stuff, right? But yeah, I mean, I love the animal eye tracking. I mean, that's one of the big steps of mirrorless technology.
And that's the biggest thing that the difference after they changed that circuit board out, it was so fast, and it was focusing on birds in flight that were coming at me from, a quarter of a mile away, and it was grabbing them and it would not let go.
Right.
And that's not what I experienced initially. And that was just the first day. So I thought, what's the best scenario? I could go out and really put this thing to the test. So I went out. There's always geese on the river, a lot of park geese, but they go, they're on the water later on, and then they go to the fields. So I was shooting geese in flight, and it was locked on. And then followed them all the way through. Even, behind, they would circle around behind some cottonwoods before they'd come back to land. And even behind, it was holding on them where there was objects in the way. So
is there any celebration?
It was
choice?
more of a huge
Great words.
sigh of relief. It was like, okay, right. All right.
Yes, here we are. Hello, nice to meet you.
This is going to be okay.
He got it back right from Canon. And I was already like, well, does it work? I mean, what? He's like, well, give me a minute. I gotta get it out of the box so I can go try it.
I was ticked that they sent me the same camera back, because I put, you write down, a description of your issue when you send it in to CPS, and I said, I do not want this camera back. And they sent me the same one back, and I was like, oh boy. I was not happy. And then, yeah, it's not the same one anymore.
Well, it's a new motherboard, right?
Totally different. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, it's a whole new brain in it. So
there was some kind of communication thing that was not clicking. I mean, there were, in Brazil, we had a giant anteater, and I may have already told this, but I don't care. I'm going to tell it again. Giant anteater, big, dark subject, lots of contrast with the vegetation that was light brown and yellow, walks out on this road. There's not a blade of grass between us and the giant anteater. And all the way across the road, these nice profiles with the baby anteater on its back with its nose on our side, didn't grab focus once. And there was nothing in the way. And I was using point focus, and I had the point dead center of that thing. Would not grab it.
That would be hard.
And I won't get that back. And that's the sad part is I'll never get that back. But on the positive side, I did get some images and that I'm happy with, not just sad that I missed those. But
do you still have your R5 Mark I? Did you have it? Or
yep. And so after that point, I never picked the R5 II up again. I took it off and put it on I had some wide angles for, just doing some close stuff, but I kept the R5 on it from that point forward. And there was one day on the river, I didn't take the R5 II back out again. I took it out, but I didn't use it for that reason. I just kept the R5 on, and it worked great. But
I'm glad you got it addressed. And I mean,
yeah, me too.
We've had lots of people asking us, if it's worth the money and if it's worth the time, the upgrade and all those things. And, I really think, knowing for us what the benefits are, I mean, you can all make your own personal decision. But for me personally, I do think it's a significant enough of a change and upgrade that it's worth it, so.
The frustrating part for me was, Mark was wanting to do this, number one, because it's a fresh camera and we want to strike while the iron's hot, as far as content. But the other thing is Canon's our sponsor.
Right.
Through Pictureline. Canon sponsors us. And it was frustrating to me that I couldn't in good faith talk about that camera and be positive. And so I just didn't want to talk about it because they are a sponsor of the podcast. And so that to me was probably the most frustrating part, is knowing that, hey, we've got this great new piece of technology, but it's not so great. in some instances.
Well,
And I'm sure
that
there's
one
others out
model.
there that have the same problem. There were, I know those guys in Australia. We talk about them once in a while, but I've watched some of their stuff on YouTube because they do really thorough reviews. And they were
Jan
using it in
Wagner.
the field, and Jan Wagner is one of them. But he was having kind of the same focus issues. Sometimes it would focus, sometimes it wouldn't. But I think that was resolved with that first firmware update, which wasn't supposed to address focus, but it did change to a degree. But yeah, I was just uncomfortable having that conversation yet until we got that resolved. But man, once it was, holy smokes, that is a beast.
Yeah, it was bad luck. It was
It
one
was.
camera that
Yeah.
was a lemon. I know of people who got lenses that wouldn't focus. Things happen with this technology, right? It's shipped all across the world and lands up by a courier who obviously everybody handles things so gently for us
Oh,
to our
for
door,
sure. Yeah.
right? There's no
Especially when they
worry.
plaster fragile stickers on it. And see
Yeah,
how far you
so
can throw that.
stuff happens, and it for whatever reason, that didn't well. So yeah, it was unfortunate.
Yeah,
To
it's
have to wait.
absolutely nobody's fault. It just was what it was.
Yeah, but it was, now that you've got it fixed and it's doing what you want. That's what's important.
That
What
is.
about battery life between 1 and 2? Same, different? What have you found anything that way?
It seems to be a little bit longer. I'm interested. I haven't shot with it. I guess Jason probably can speak to it a little bit more because I haven't shot with it in cold weather at all. This weekend may be the first time if it does get cold, but battery life seems to be just fine. I mean, except for I shoot a lot more videos, so I probably chew them up anyway.
You have a grip. You have the two
But I
batteries.
have the dual battery
Right.
grip, and
Yeah.
yeah, you can shoot about half a day with video and be fine. But then you probably need to either recharge or switch them out. Have a fresh set when you go into your evening.
Yeah, for me, for the batteries, I'm mostly doing photos again, but I get about, I can get about a card, for me, a 256 card out of a set of batteries. So, it's around 5,000 images, so I feel like that's pretty good.
It's more than the average person needs.
Yeah, for sure.
It's a good day's work.
Yeah.
And then, as we've talked about on a recent podcast tonight,
Yeah, right.
that's a good day's work, and then a good solid couple of weeks of editing.
A
Yeah,
couple weeks
exactly.
work, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But
Good
I
to hear.
think there are some to me, the color, going back to the color question that you asked, Mark, it's aside from that little orange hue, I guess it's a little bit more D850-esque as far as the color. That is going to forever probably be my comparison because it was kind of unrivaled. That sensor was fantastic. But I think this has that feel when you get good light. It does have that feel with the color as far as the color goes.
I would agree. I don't know if I believe that. I'm just teasing. For those watching the YouTube,
No, because our YouTube, it's Who's Been Purple. It's this fantastic software that we have for this podcast. Whoever's talking, it automatically switches to that person to keep it as
nice.
dynamic as possible for our viewers.
You're so tricky, Mark.
But it's I'm happy to hear this, and given all of the anticipation and excitement you guys had leading up to the release, this we wait. We watch this. It's what we do, photography. So we're always dialed in to what's coming. Just not that we're going to jump at everything, but just out of curiosity, where is technology going? Because it has changed immensely in our lifetime for
I'm going to
photography.
go back to my friend Sam Zerke, and you guys both know Sam. He sent me that April Fool's thing quite a while ago. And it was so far-fetched. It was like all these different specs on the A1W, or the 1DW is what it was going to be,
Okay.
right? It was 1D for wildlife, and it was 20 frames a second. It was eye autofocus. It was automatic eye tracking for birds, and automatic tracking of birds in flight, pre-record. And these specs were just so crazy. Everybody was like, yeah, that's never going to happen. And we're there. I mean, just 4 years later, what was an April Fool's joke is now reality, and we are there, and we have that camera, or have the capability of having that camera in our hands. And to me, that's mind blowing where they've come just in such a short time.
Yeah.
And it's not, it's Canon, but it's not just Canon. It's all of the flagships are just unbelievable pieces of technology, pieces of machinery, fantastic tools, and you can't really go wrong anymore. No matter what brand you have, you can't go wrong at all.
Yeah, really. Nobody has a right to complain about any the functionality of these flagships of any of these major brands of camera, and the changing is exciting and dizzying at the same time, right? You can now I think I'm right about this portrait mode in the smartphones, and you can slide the depth of field now. Get what you want. So when does that come in post, right? So we're all love, a 400-2.8, right?
It's already there, Mark, in the beta Lightroom version.
So I use beta every day, but in Photoshop, which obviously would probably have it too, they seem to put them out at the same time with the
right. Apparently, it's in the Lightroom version. Yep.
You can change your depth of field from the subject that way. So, I mean, post is becoming so relevant to photography now, right? Yeah, that part of it too. Amazing. So I'm glad to hear that you're happy now, Ron, and that things are good. I look forward to being on hopefully another trip with you in the future where we can shoot and both be happy with what's happening. And
that was
Jason.
So Mark and I were in this scenario where this buck was injured and he was going down to water. And I kind of snuck down to try to get closer to water level because I just saw the potential for a good reflection shot.
I thought you were thirsty.
Mark went around a different way for the same reason, seeing the reflection shot that was about to happen. And I got down there, and probably the first 15 to 20 images, I was locked on this buck with a focus point, and they were all soft. And then it picked him up, but it was different posture. And so
you posted that one.
I posted, yeah. So it finally locked onto him, but it was different posture. He wasn't giving me a side view. He was turned toward me, so that the reflection wasn't as good and wasn't as complete. But it was good, but it wasn't what I had initially been trying to get. And that was when I decided that was the end of that.
Well, they came through.
And I started making a list of what would happen if I had to change systems.
Right. Yeah. No, I remember. I just think these are our tools, right? Yeah. And they have to work for us, and there are imperfections, and human error, all kinds of elements, but we rely on our tools to be consistent, and they have to be. Otherwise, we need different tools.
Right.
But again, it was I've had camera bodies that ordered that had a bad motherboard, right? A body once, and it, and I got a replacement, and it was fine, and it was always fine. So it was just I'm glad that's behind you, but I could feel the pain in the field because, wildlife and nature photography and even studio stuff, nobody wants to repeat it. And you can't in wildlife and nature photography. That buck is not going to be in that light in that spot again.
Right.
So we don't want to lose it, the opportunity because of our tools. But it was bad luck, and worse luck can happen to us. And I'm glad that it's fixed.
Yeah, it was just a camera.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I had to share a room with you, Mark, and so there may have been some
room with Ron.
Well, let me rephrase that. I had the wonderful opportunity to share a room with Ron. And there may have been some whimpering and some tears shed, some nightmares that happened that night. But
and did you study the serial number on your camera before going to bed?
That's a good question.
This is a trust question. How close are you guys? I know the answer to this.
We're close enough that Jason was willing to give me a camera.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, of course. You got it 100% trust.
I meant trade for my camera.
Right.
Yeah. Test it and trade it.
Yeah.
Right?
Just pop the batteries out, Jason. It'll come back on.
That's interesting. I haven't shot the one on my 600 since we got back, so I better do some checking. That's funny.
Well, again, I saw quite a few of them this fall, and everybody else I ran into were happy. And all the feedback I received was positive. Yep. So, and I have another friend who just picked up an R1 2 weeks ago, and I was messaging him, quite frequently, but a day or so ago. I said, "How do you like it?" And he hasn't tested it enough yet. He's setting it up still. He doesn't have a shoot at the moment, but looking forward to hearing the feedback on that from him.
Yeah, I think it's, from what I've seen, it's a fantastic photography tool. Leaves a little bit to be desired on the video end and resolution end, but as far as a sports / wildlife / birds camera, that quad pixel autofocus is even snappier than
It'd be fun to try, right?
Yeah.
I'm curious just to see how it felt, whether it was how noticeable that would be.
Mm-hmm.
I'm happy to volunteer Canon for
a volunteer's tribute.
His tribute.
Honestly, they should be sending. I mean, grateful for their sponsorship, but as a business person, you'd think that they should send each piece of equipment so that it could be commented on for our podcast. Not that they have to give it to you guys or us, but to test it for that reason. They do to the popular YouTubers, get them. So, right. And we do have, I know for a fact, a lot of our listening audience shoots Canon. So the more feedback and information they have, the better choices they can make for cameras and lenses. And you're both such seasoned photographers. I would love playing with it as well, just to see what they can do, of course. I loved the R5 Mark I and 1:5 that I had for one autumn when I was shooting it. No complaints at all. But yeah, for what it's worth, they should definitely send testers out for you guys to play with, I think, and give feedback on. And who knows? I mean, generate sales. If it's good stuff and you love it, you're going to say you love it, right? That's all part of why. I mean, they want to put out the best product they can and promote it the best way they can.
Yeah.
Right.
We have a great.
I told the lady at CPS that if they would rather put an R1 in the box, I would go ahead and shoot it.
Yeah, exactly. And we have such a niche audience. I mean, our vast majority of our listeners are photographers. Of animals, of wildlife, of nature, of landscapes. It's, anyway. And thank you for being part of our audience and listening to our podcast. As we close in on our 1-year anniversary coming up soon, guys, for the show, Beyond the Wild. And I want to give a shout out, we Ron, Jason, and I would like to give a big shout out to our sponsors first, Pictureline, and to Canon USA. Both have been wonderful this year and very supportive, and we're grateful for that. It helps us to put this great show together for you folks and have our guests and just have a great time of sharing stories with you. And but I brought this up for our producer. Thank you to Jason Griffiths, our producer. He's been on board since the second month of the show and has been phenomenal. He's been going above expectation. Any questions we have, he's researching stuff. He's learning new software for us, developing new things. He's got Patreon set up. We just have to, now that we're back together and home, we have a lot of content coming forward, by the way, very exciting, but create some of that for Patreon as a subscription service that helps support our podcast. Of course, there's going to be these ones that you're used to seeing, available for free, but there will be added content for those that thoroughly enjoy our show and want to support the show and enjoy additional content through Patreon. And there'll be the merch site coming forward as well, which supports the show. Any of that we're grateful for. Jason also looks after all of the launching, editing of our podcasts on all the audio platforms and on YouTube and our website. And if you haven't been to our website, we strongly encourage you to go there, beyondthewildpodcast.com, because there's a lot of stuff there that just isn't shared as far as everyday conversation on the show. A lot more in depth. There's each podcast has its own show notes, has images that are discussed throughout the show, and there's links on there. And just keeping up to date. You can give your email address so that and we keep that in confidence, of course, and when we have anything coming up, that could be an announcement that would go out an email, such as the Patreon or anything new that we develop, we would share with that information. But overall, just a big shout out to Jason Griffiths for his producing work this year. And he helps get this show out to you. We love doing it, but he's got expertise for all those other elements that we're very grateful for. He
really makes us look good. He really does. Right? He does. Amen. Yeah. Thanks, Jace.
JG, if you guys ever see him in the field, it's JG.
He's I have a nickname for him. He's my Tega bro. He's done trips with me. We did study wildlife biology together in university, and we did an Alaska trip together, and that nickname came up on the trip. Had a great time. Just some fun stats. So another thing that Jason does for us is he puts together a monthly stats package for our sponsors and just updates them on where the show is growing and how it's doing. And just last month, we had fewer episodes than normal nowadays. We strive to have one a week for you to enjoy. But because of traveling last month, we only had 2 over the month. We still had 5,400 downloads. So thank you to all of you for those great numbers. It's very much appreciated. It makes us feel the love for the show and putting that out. And we also surpassed 2,000 followers on Instagram this month. So that's great to have accomplished that in a year on the platform with the way it is for the algorithm right now to get going. So thank you. That boils down to our gratitude in sharing information with people about the show, putting it on your stories, telling people about it who are interested in wildlife nature photography or hearing adventure stories from around the world, from us, from our guests. Any of that sharing you do helps us so much. For those of you that haven't taken a moment, if you do have 1 minute to spare when you finish listening to us on Apple Podcasts, just scroll to the bottom on the main page for Beyond the Wild and give us a review, 5 stars, and make a comment. Just a couple of sentences. That kind of stuff gives us traction on these platforms and helps our show be presented more often, and would be extremely appreciated as well. Same on YouTube. At the end of it, the thumbs up or the 5-star, any type of review, that helps us a lot too. So thank you for those that have done that, and for those of you that have a minute to spare in the future, it's huge gratitude for that, because we love putting this together for you. Same with Spotify. It's the same. You can do a rating and review on there too. I saw something interesting today, guys, on Spotify. I have to ask JG about this because he's our tech guy on this side of it. But I saw a video playing on a podcast on Spotify today.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't just audio. It was both on the platform.
Oh, yeah. It's been that way for quite a long time. Yeah.
Okay.
You can throw video content up there.
Yep. So I think we could hypothetically put the video version of our podcast up on Spotify as well as on YouTube, and do the audio only on Apple right now. But
so yes, it's those are the stats I want to put out there, and just remind everybody about the website, because you can also access the other podcasts and see the summary that way as well.
And we've had an awesome year. It's been fun working with you guys, literally kind of working with you, but it's not really work, right? We're doing this because it's a passion project, and we love to meet new people and hear their stories. But it's been a lot of fun to run into the folks in the field too. So we appreciate you taking the time to come and say hi. And we usually try to have some stickers or something on us to help say thank you or whatever. But just another reminder to, if you do run into us, please don't hesitate to come say hey. And we like meeting all the awesome listeners we have out there, and Mark already said it, but a huge thank you. We have some loyal listeners that are just huge supporters, and we really, really appreciate it. So,
most definitely. And I every podcast is a surprise to us. Even when it's the three of us, we never know where the conversation's necessarily going to go, which keeps it fun. And our guests, we try to do our best to have a variety of guests from different genres and different experiences, different backgrounds, different stories, how they got there, where they're going. But they're all such great conversations to us, and we appreciate all their time, and the stories that we hear from them really help take us into, part of their world and what their celebration of this art form that we all enjoy. So it's a thrill to do this podcast.
I want to tell a real funny story about meeting a photographer in the field, as Jason was just talking about before we just totally sign off. So Mark and I are walking on this trail, and coming down the trail, there's a photographer, Merrick, Colorado Wildlife Photos is Merrick's Instagram page. Anyway, he looks at me and recognizes me, and we're talking for a minute, and then he was kind of looking my direction, and Mark said something, and his head snapped around so fast because he recognized Mark's voice. And it's funny how many times that happens. You're shooting right next to somebody, but until you say something, they don't necessarily recognize us. And as soon as he heard Mark's voice, he got excited. And thanks again, Merrick. And sorry we didn't have stickers the first time, but we got them. We got them to you the second day.
It's
great to meet you.
Yes, always a joy to meet people, and I'm always flattered with that, most definitely. Mm-hmm. And it was the first time I met Merrick, and it's CO Wildlife Photos on Instagram, and he's been posting some fantastic videos and photos lately, and his stories as well. So it was a delight to meet him and to follow his work for sure.
Yeah.
So R5 Mark II, like it, check.
Boom,
2
baby.
checks now.
Finally.
As of today.
2 checks as of today, yeah.
As of today. But, we've been wanting to talk about it, and happy to finally do so. And thanks again to our sponsors and to everybody out there. Oh, I have something I've written on my little podcast table here for a couple of weeks and haven't been able to say it. And it's not really that significant, but it's just a reflection on day-to-day life. Just to remember not to take ourselves too seriously, and don't sweat the small stuff. That's a wrap for another episode of Beyond the Wild podcast. We'd like to thank our sponsors, Pictureline.com, your online source for everything photography, and Canon USA. Follow us on Instagram at Beyond the Wild Podcast, and make sure to check out our website at beyondthewildpodcast.com for additional show notes, information, and photographs for all of our episodes. You can watch our podcast on YouTube, where we'll include video and photo content, and subscribe. We welcome your comments, questions, and feedback on all of our social media platforms. We hope that you enjoyed this episode of Beyond the Wild podcast. Until next time, embrace adventure in the great outdoors with a camera in hand.